Thanks, Kevin. Protesters took to the streets of Detroit last night after police fatally shot a man. This was the scene near San Juan and McNichols. Police Chief James Craig will be joining us live in just a moment. But before that, our Alan Campbell shows us what happened before DPD released dramatic video showing what went down at the scene.
8 shots fired in 5 seconds. 8 shots fired in 5 seconds.
Police Chief James Craig outlining the events that happened leading up to a deadly officer-involved shooting near San Juan and West McNichols around 12:30 Friday afternoon.
Officers from the 12th Precinct and the Gang Intelligence Unit were there engaging in surveillance.
Chief Craig says officers were in the area to make an arrest on a man the chief called Mr. Sylvester on a DEA warrant after a deadly shooting earlier this month.
The gentleman wearing the white T-shirt was the focus of their investigation. He was the individual being arrested.
Chief Craig says Mr. Sylvester was arrested without incident. However, during the arrest, the chief says Hakeem Littleton drew a handgun from his side pocket, pointed it at the officer, and fired.
We believe, based on our investigation, at that point he fired 2 shots in quick succession. Mr. Littleton continued firing his weapon even as he was on the ground. Officers have recovered 4 casings at the scene consistent with the weapon possessed by Mr. Littleton.
Police returning fire, hitting Littleton 4 times. Chief Craig says officers recovered a .25 caliber blue steel semi-automatic Beretta belonging to Littleton. The chief saying the officer who was fired upon is a hero.
Even though he was being fired upon, he did not have his gun out at that time, and he pursued this individual.
Alan Campbell, 7 Action News.
And as you saw, we did hear from the police chief last night. He is now joining us live this morning to elaborate a little bit more on the incident. Good morning, Chief Craig.
Hey, good morning, Simon. How are you doing this morning?
We're doing good. We want to ask you right out the gate. At a time when police-involved shootings are under more scrutiny than ever, what were your initial thoughts when you heard about the exchange of gunfire yesterday afternoon?
Well, it was important for me to get out as soon as we could. You know, within an hour, I mean, literally 1 hour after the shooting incident, I made a statement because I understand the urgency of it. But instead, there were irresponsible individuals who started going to social media and putting out erroneous information. I'm talking about that we assassinated this young man, that he was on his front porch. I mean, and so certainly it angered some. And then you had the outsiders that came in a mob-like fashion and started to attack our officers. So it was critically important to get out the video as soon as we could. And I really got to applaud our homicide section, certainly the men and women of the 12th Precinct, and certainly our hero. I mean, when you look at that video, you can't help but look and say, wow, what an American hero. He was being fired upon. And without regard for his own safety, he pursued this armed violent suspect, and you know, just an amazing response by this officer.
And Chief, can you tell me how the officer and the other officers involved are doing this morning? What happens with them in the investigation next?
Well, we're going to continue with our investigation. As I pointed out yesterday, even when we came out with our video, it wasn't even 12 hours into it. And so that was remarkable. So we're going to follow the same process that we always follow. But I think it's important for the community to know how quickly we came out with information so that we could educate the community with factual information, not this erroneous stuff that was really inciting violence. And so that's the challenge we face today. This knee-jerk reaction without the facts and assuming that because the officer had to use deadly force in some way, he was wrong.
And Chief, I know the investigation is ongoing, but do you know why Hakeem Littleton fired shots to begin with? He wasn't the one that was being arrested. What can you tell us so far?
What I can say is he made a statement. He was actually initially walking away from the contact, walking away, and then he turned around, came to the officer's direction and says, basically, I'm not going to let you take my man. And he took out a gun and started firing.
And Chief, quickly, can you answer this? Now, you were able to turn around that video quickly, just hours after the shooting. Can we expect that same form of transparency in future incidents, that type of turnaround?
I can't guarantee it. I can tell you that I've always come out as quickly that's possible. You know, these are very complex investigations many times. I mean, I got to think about due process, you know, the fairness to the investigation without undermining it. So it is always my goal to come out. As I pointed out, yesterday was no different than what I've done in the past. As soon as I had information, I stood before your colleagues, gave information so the community would know. But it's no easy task to turn it around like we did yesterday. But it was critically important. We did that, and we're going to continue to do that. We're in some very difficult times, not just here in the city of Detroit, but across this country.
All right, thank you so much, Police Chief James Craig, joining us this morning.